I saw him standing at the front of the classroom with his hands in his pockets, laughing with the principal like this was his territory, and in that moment, I thought everything was over. The room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and dry erase markers, the kind of scent that clings to elementary schools no matter how old the building gets. The walls were crowded with construction paper projects, crooked houses, glittery suns, stick figure families labeled in careful handwriting. I sat in one of the tiny plastic chairs, my knees angled awkwardly outward, my back straight only because I didn't trust myself to relax. Across from me, Everett Calderon looked perfectly at ease. He wore the same navy blazer he always put on when he wanted to be taken seriously. Sleeves pressed, collar crisp, wedding rings still on his finger even though we hadn't shared a bed in almost a year. He had perfected the look of a devoted father, concerned but calm, attentive without seeming emotional. The kind of man teachers nodded at approvingly before he even opened his mouth. "I just don't know what else to do," he was saying, his voice warm and regret-tinged. "I'm worried about them. I feel like I'm carrying the school side of things alone." Principal Maribel Quinn stood beside him, her hands folded in front of her, listening carefully. She was in her late 50s, hair pulled back into a low bun, glasses perched at the edge of her nose. She had the posture of someone who had learned how to stay neutral in the face of other people's storms. Behind Everett, our children sat side by side. Theo stared at the floor, jaw tight, his sneaker tapping against the leg of his chair in an uneven rhythm. Mara sat rigidly upright, hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. She hadn't looked at her father once since we'd walked into the room. I hadn't either. Everett continued, shaking his head slightly. "I don't want to badmouth their mother, but it hurts them when she doesn't show up. They notice. Kids always notice." My chest constricted. I focused on the laminated poster above the whiteboard. "Be kind in word and action," and forced my breathing to slow. My fingers were numb from being laced together so tightly. I told myself to stay quiet, stay still, don't react. That was always his strategy. Say the thing calmly enough that any correction sounded defensive. Principal Quinn nodded slowly. "You requested this meeting because you felt there was a lack of parental involvement?" "Yes," Everett said, on one side. Mara's shoulders tensed. Theo swallowed hard. I didn't move. The silence that followed felt deliberate, heavy. Everett knew how to use quiet like a weapon, how to let it stretch until people filled it for him. He turned his head just enough to look at me, his expression softening into practiced concern. "You can tell them if you want," he said gently. "If there's something I'm missing." My throat burned. I stared at the floor. Inside my head, the familiar spiral began. Maybe they believed him. Maybe all the afternoons I'd spent shelving library books, helping with art projects, organizing reading groups, had blurred together into nothing. Maybe because I didn't talk about it at home, it didn't count. Maybe silence had taught them the wrong lesson. My chest felt tight, like my ribs were wrapped in wire. I stayed quiet. Something shifted then. Not outwardly, but deep inside. A heaviness settled into resolve. I couldn't keep surviving by disappearing. I couldn't keep letting him rewrite the story while I stood there and let my absence be imagined. I leaned forward slightly, the small chair creaking beneath me. The sound was too loud in the stillness. I placed my palms on my knees and stood. I wasn't standing to fight. I was standing to leave. I reached for my bag, my fingers brushing the thick folder inside. Years of emails, printed and sorted by date. I hadn't planned to use them today. I'd hoped, stupidly, that I wouldn't need to. I took a step toward the door. "Miss Calderon?" Principal Quinn said. I froze. Her voice wasn't sharp, it was grounded, calm, the kind of tone that made you stop even when everything in you wanted escape. "There's something I think we should look at before anyone leaves." Everett frowned. "I don't see how—" Principal Quinn had already turned toward her desk. She opened her laptop. the soft click of keys filling the room. Everett's confidence wavered just slightly, like a man realizing he'd stepped onto unfamiliar ground. "You said their mother never comes to school events," she said without looking up. "That's right. And that she doesn't care." "Yes." She turned the screen toward us. "We keep comprehensive records of parent communication and volunteer involvement." Everett let out a small laugh. "I think there's been some mistake." She clicked once, then again. Rows of emails filled the screen. My name, dates, subject lines. Mara leaned forward abruptly. Theo stood halfway out of his chair. "For the last 6 years," Principal Quinn said evenly, "Miss Calderon has volunteered an average of once per week." The air seemed to leave the room. Everett stepped closer. "That's not possible." She coordinated classroom reading rotations. She assisted in the library. She supervised field trips. She attended curriculum planning meetings. She communicated regularly with teachers. She scrolled. Theo whispered, "That's when you stayed late." Mara's voice trembled. "You came even when you were tired." Everett's jaw clenched. "Emails don't prove presence." Principal Quinn clicked again. "Volunteer sign-in sheets do." Another column appeared. Names, check marks, times. She paused, then added quietly, "In contrast, Mr. Calderon, you have not replied to a single school email since your children were enrolled here." Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Theo turned toward his father slowly. "You said Mom never came." Everett's mouth opened, then closed. Mara's eyes filled with tears. "You said she didn't care." "I was protecting you," Everett said quickly. "I didn't want you to feel abandoned." I finally spoke. "I never told them you didn't care." My voice was steady. I didn't recognize it myself. Everett looked at me, something sharp flashing across his face. "You let them believe it?" "No," I said quietly. "I let them watch." Principal Quinn closed the laptop. "This meeting was requested to address concerns," she said. "I believe those concerns have been clarified." Everett looked around, searching for support. There was none. Theo walked toward me and took my hand. Mara followed, pressing close to my side. Their weight grounded me in a way nothing else ever had. As we left the classroom, Everett said my name. I didn't turn. The hallway felt brighter than it had before, murals lining the walls, lockers humming faintly with the echo of the school day. Our footsteps moved together, steady and aligned. Outside, Theo exhaled shakily. Why would he say that? I knelt in front of him, meeting his eyes. Because sometimes people confuse being seen with being important. Mara leaned into me. "We know now." That night, after the house settled into quiet, I opened the folder and slid the emails back into place. Proof wasn't power anymore. Witness was. And I didn't yet know it, but what had started in that classroom was only the beginning. I decided that night that I wasn't going to explain myself anymore. The decision didn't come with fireworks or relief. It came quietly, the way exhaustion does when it finally outweighs fear. I stood at the kitchen sink long after the kids had gone to bed, the house humming softly around me, and understood with an almost clinical clarity that I was done trying to correct a version of reality Everett preferred. I was done reacting. That didn't mean I was finished. It meant I was finished being dragged. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the table where Theo had left his math workbook open, pencil abandoned mid-problem. Mara's backpack leaned against the wall, a library book sticking out at an angle, ordinary evidence of a life that kept going whether I felt steady or not. I packed lunches, poured cereal, listened to the soft thud of feet on the stairs. Theo shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. Mara followed, hair half-braided, still waking up. "Morning," I said. They answered in unison, voices sleepy but lighter than they'd been in weeks. As we ate, Mara glanced at me. Dad texted. My stomach tightened, but I nodded. What did he say? He asked if we wanted to come over tonight. Theo frowned. I don't want to. Mara hesitated. Me neither. I didn't rush to reassure them. I let the moment breathe. You don't have to decide right now, I said. We'll talk about it. At the school drop-off, Everett was already there, leaning against his car, phone in hand. He smiled when he saw them, the same public smile he'd worn in the classroom. Hey, buddy, he said to Theo. Hey, Peanut. Theo stopped short. I'm going with Mom, he said. Everett blinked. Of course you are. He looked at me, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. Can we talk later? We can talk through our lawyers, I said, calmly. His smile faltered, just for a second. That afternoon, my phone rang while I was shelving returns at the library. I recognized the number immediately. I didn't answer. It rang again. I silenced it and kept working. An hour later, an email appeared in my inbox. Subject line, we need to fix this. I closed my laptop. The interruption came 2 days later, sharp and unexpected. Principal Quinn called me into her office just after dismissal. Her expression was careful, measured. I want you to hear this from me, she said. Mr. Calderon has filed a formal complaint. My pulse spiked. About what? He's alleging parental alienation, she said. Specifically that you've manipulated the children against him. I felt the floor drop out from under me. She held up a hand. I don't believe it, but it triggered a mandatory review. My chest tightened, but my voice stayed level. What does that mean? It means documentation, she said, which we have. She opened a drawer and pulled out a thick file. Emails, logs, volunteer schedules, years of quiet consistency. I'll support you, she said simply. That night, Everett showed up unannounced. I saw his car through the window, headlights cutting across the living room wall. My body reacted before my mind could catch up, heart racing, shoulders tense, but I didn't move toward the door. Theo noticed first. That's Dad. I know, I said. The knock came hard, insistent. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. This has gone far enough, he said, anger breaking through his composure. You embarrassed me. I told the truth, I replied. You let them see things out of context. They saw context, I said. Years of it. He stepped closer. You're poisoning them. Theo appeared at the hallway entrance. Mara stood just behind him. Everett saw them and softened instantly. Hey, I just want to talk. Theo shook his head. You lied. Everett's jaw tightened. I was trying to protect you. From what? Mara asked quietly. He had no answer. I'm leaving, he snapped, turning away. This isn't over. I closed the door behind him and locked it. 2 weeks later, the court date arrived. Everett had pushed for it. Emergency custody review, citing emotional manipulation. He was certain he could still control the narrative if he acted fast enough. He was wrong. The courtroom was larger than I expected, the ceiling high, the air cool and formal. Everett sat at the opposite table with his attorney, posture rigid, jaw clenched. When he saw the kids walk in beside me, something flickered across his face. Panic, quickly masked. The judge, Honorable Elise Moreno, entered and took her seat. Proceedings began. Everett's attorney spoke first, outlining concerns about my alleged interference. Everett nodded along, expression solemn. When it was my turn, my attorney stood calmly. Your Honor, she said, we would like to submit evidence. She handed over binders, email logs, volunteer records, testimonies from teachers, statements from the principal. Everett's attorney frowned, flipping through pages too quickly. Then came the interruption Everett hadn't anticipated. Judge Moreno turned to the children. You've been present for much of this, she said gently. Do you wish to speak? Everett shot to his feet. They're being coached. The judge raised a hand. "Sit down, Mr. Calderon." Theo stood. His voice shook, but he didn't stop. "My mom was always there." Mara followed. "Dad told us she didn't care." That wasn't true. Everett's attorney stared at the documents, face pale. Judge Moreno leaned forward. "Mr. Calderon," she said, "do you dispute these records?" Everett opened his mouth, closed it. "No," he said finally. The power shifted then, unmistakably. The judge ruled swiftly. Primary custody to me, supervised visitation for Everett pending counseling, mandatory co-parenting education. Everett slumped back in his chair, the fight gone. Outside the courthouse, the kids stood close to me, shoulders lighter. Weeks passed. Life settled into a new rhythm. Everett attended his sessions. His texts grew shorter, less accusatory. One evening, as I tucked Mara into bed, she asked, "Why didn't you show them before?" I brushed her hair back. "Because I hoped I wouldn't have to." She nodded, understanding more than her years should require. Later, alone at the table, I thought about the years I'd spent believing that being quiet was the same as being kind. It wasn't. That's when I realized presence isn't proven by volume, it's proven by history, and truth doesn't need to shout when it's been showing up all along.
You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.